Hello mouses! It's been a couple of days since I made a video because I've been very ill, so I'm going to apologise straight off for that. If you really think it's necessary, you can leave ideas for punishment videos in the comments below. But let's get straight into what I want to talk about. Today, with NaNoWriMo coming up, I want to talk about how to write a successful novel. And by successful, I mean you get from the start of the novel to the end and you've written it all, rather than how to write a bestseller, because to be honest with you, even the people who are successful can't tell you how to write a bestseller. They can only tell you what worked for them. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk about successfully completing your novel. Okay, there are 7 steps to a successful novel completion. And the first one is to plan your time. If you don't have your time planned out properly, you will not get to the end of your novel. Writing a novel requires a lot of time commitment. So you've got to say, from this point to this point, I will be sitting writing. Look at it as work. Look at it as a job. It's your second job or your third job, whatever. And you're going to do that job between this time and this time. Nothing else is going to come. So when you sit down to write, don't say, oh, I'll answer the phone because I want to make sure that people who want to get in touch can get in touch. No. Leave the phone. Don't sit down and first of all check your emails or check Facebook, because that will eat up all of your time. Let that slide for an hour or maybe 2 hours. You are writing. You are at work. You should treat it as such. That's how you get your novel done. Set an amount of time that you know you can do. Don't overestimate it. Even if you just have half an hour a day, make sure you get that half an hour. And set that time aside and then do the writing. Step 2, and this is really important as well, give your main character some flaws. Nobody's perfect, and to write a perfect character is to write a boring character. If they can do everything, and they're brilliant at everything, and they've never ever failed, what's the point in reading about them? Books are about drama and conflict. There's got to be some kind of struggle to defeat an obstacle or overcome an odd or whatever, but there's always got to be something there that the main character may not be able to do. And if you've got a perfect character who can do anything and is never wrong, then that's gone. Because right from the start you know, oh, Mary Sue, she's going to do this, this and this, and she's going to get through this problem. Because it's not a problem for her, it's just a minor inconvenience. That's no good. So, as part of this one, not only give your character flaws, but beat them over the head with them. Let's say you've got a main character who's an alcoholic. They're struggling with alcoholism, but they've also got to rescue this person who has been kidnapped. And all they want to do is sit down and take a drink and get away from the struggle that they've got inside them. They're constantly plagued by it. If they take a drink, they know they'll take another one. And they'll go into a roller coaster where the person they're trying to save will end up dead because they didn't save them. And they'll wake up in the middle of a gutter somewhere 2 days later with no memory of what's gone on. So they can't possibly stop. But at every turn there's a temptation. Now that's a struggle. But if you've got a character who is gung-ho Dave and he's never ever had a problem because he's always been able to beat or think his way out of it, or possibly think and then beat, then what's the point? He is an 80s action hero. You know he's going to get to the end. He might get a couple of flesh wound grazes here and there, and maybe short ones, or he won't quite get the girl and then he'll get the girl, and then that's what's the point? There's a reason those films aren't really popular anymore. Okay, The Expendables, yeah, but there's a reason those films aren't popular anymore. It's because they're not realistic. They were nice wish fulfillment at the time, but we've moved on. Okay, point 3. Know your audience. This is a big one as well, because, let's face it, if you're going to come into a genre that is already established, you should know the conventions that have been established. For example, let's say you're coming into urban fantasy, and you've got a main character who's a wizard. Well, that's great. Those books are really popular at the moment. But one thing that has developed around them is that magic in urban fantasy has rules. And if you come in not knowing that and decide to write a wizard character who can do anything, well, you've got a perfect hero again. So let's not have Wizard Mary Sue. Let's have Wizard Mary Smith, who knows that magic has limits and is always trying to push those limits to get an advantage over the other person. Now, your conflict there could be, well, what if she can't push the magic to the limits just this once? Or what if she pushes and she's found the limit, but she has to go a bit further? What does she do? There's a bit of conflict for you. There's a story. But if magic has no limits, then you've got He-Man. And what's the point of that? Because all the magic in there is, oh, we need to wrap the plot up. Quick, do some magic. And then plot's resolved and everyone goes away thinking, well, that was a bit of a disappointment. So, know the conventions of your genre. For example, you're coming into a science fiction show and you need to get your characters all over the universe. How do you do it? You can't just magic them there, because that's not good. You can't just walk there. You can't never mention how they got there, because the people who read this stuff or watch the shows know that there's some sort of explanation for this travel, and they're expecting you to give it. Your audience expects something if you are writing in a certain genre. Steampunk, for example. If you are not well versed in steam technology and Victorian values and principles and culture, then your audience is going to get annoyed with you. Because they're well versed in this stuff. They know what to expect from having read other things. If you don't live up to it, you're not going to come across well. So, know your genre. Simple as that. Just read a few things. If you need to, look up some websites that explain the genre, just so that you've got it clear in your head what's expected of you, so that you can deliver it. Or, and this is even better, so you can subvert it. For example, there's a magic system that you've established because it looks like every other magic system, but it's not. And the key integral part of your plot is going to be the revelation that magic in your system looks like the others, but doesn't work that way. So your character can use that to their advantage, and also to surprise the reader. That's great, but if you don't know the genre, you can't do that. Okay, let's move on. Point 4. Know where your story is going. It doesn't matter whether you're the kind of person who writes from the seat of their pants and just goes through with plot, 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 and writes it all without having planned anything. As long as you know where your story is going. Otherwise, you end up with a rambling mess that no one's going to want to read because you don't know where it was going. Equally, if you're going to plot out everything so you know where everything's going and how to move the plot from start to finish, that's great. As long as you know where the finish is so you can aim towards it. Things sometimes coalesce. If you're Stephen King and you just write from your pants and you find out where it's going, then you write back to make sure that everything focuses onto that point. That's great. That's fine. Find where your story is going and aim towards it. It will make writing so much easier because you know what you have to get to. So that's a very short one, but it's equally important because how many people write for Nano? Loads. How many people fail? Loads. How many don't know where the story was going? Loads. The Venn diagram for that is basically concentric circles. Point 5 links in with point 4, which is if you find a point in your story where you can't move on, leave it. Move to the next part where you can work from there. Basically, you write until you've hit a dead end that you can't possibly get past because for some reason it's just not clicking in your head. But you know where the story's going, so you can leap ahead to after the point where this problem that you've set is resolved. And then you write from there because you can come back later. It'll click into your head at some other point. Oh, this is how to do that. Tap, tap, tap. Now you've got a link between the part that you wrote before and the part that you wrote later. And it all flows nicely. That is one of the things that separates a successful writer from a non-successful writer. That the ability to move on and come back later to fill in blanks. I can show you several books right in here in the office that have worked from that. These 2 books here, they're not by me, they're by my partner Jennifer. She writes novels having an idea of where they're going, but not planning it out. She writes it and scene by scene in bits that come to her head. She links them all together, rearranges things, and then goes over the entire manuscript once it's put together, rewriting the whole thing to make it coherent and flow from start to finish. It is a very technical way of writing. It's not one that I work with myself because I prefer to plot everything out in advance, but it works so well. These books work really well. They got published, so they must be good. Well, actually, now I say that, 50 Shades of Grey got published. They got published because people like them. And that's a way that works. It's a technique that works. If you get to a point where you can't write the next bit, leave it, move on. Don't let it stop you writing. That's what I want to emphasize with this point. Don't let the fact that you can't write a certain scene stop you writing your book, because you'll be able to write that scene later. Just remember that, move on. Coming back to the idea of 50 Shades of Grey and books that we probably don't like, point 6 is don't be afraid to suck. Not everyone's going to like your book. I'll tell you that straight off. Even the world's greatest classics are not liked by everyone. I'm not a fan of a lot of Charles Dickens. I love Pickwick Papers, but I couldn't get through Great Expectations. Just as Stephanie Meyer and 50 Shades of Grey, I cannot read them. I find them unreadable. But some people, lots of people in fact, love them. Sucking is in the eye of the reader. Don't let it get you down. Write your book. Just write it without a care for what people will think about it. Because here's the most important thing. What you write now is not what will get published. When you finish your draft, it's important to put it aside. Leave it for about 6 weeks so that the majority of the writing has gone out of your head. You can't remember clearly what you wrote. So that you can come back to it and reread it as if you're a reader, as if you're coming to it for the first time. And then you can edit and rewrite to make it work. Like John Green said with a lot of his books, John Green being one of the vlogbrothers in case you don't know, he writes his novels and then he rewrites them and he puts in all the bits that people actually love about the book. He gets the basic book down on paper and then he goes over it and he enhances it to the point where it becomes the novel that we'll actually see in the shops. Apparently most of the things that people adore about his books come out in the second or the third draft. The same will happen with you. You get the basic bare bones down and you'll find a lot of it is stuff that you later come and say, no, that's not going to work, or that would work but not in this case, and then you rewrite it so it does work. And then it looks great and it reads great and people will love it. But you've got to start from the point that your first draft will suck. Your first draft will not be what you want your book to be. But if you don't have that first draft, you will never get the book that you want it to be. So remember that and just write it and don't care about it sucking. Which leads us into point 7, our final point. Edit later. Do not sit down at the start of your writing period and look over what you did the other day and then edit it all so that it looks a bit better for you today. Because I'll tell you what will happen then. You'll get 10 pages of prose that you are wonderfully happy with. You are ecstatic over this 10 pages of a book that you'll never finish. Do not edit while you're writing. Edit later. Even if it ends up with several bits that just don't make sense, it doesn't matter because you're going to come back to it and sort that out later. Get your story down on paper or on screen or whatever. Just get it there so that you can come back and have a look at it later. And that's all I've really got to say. So, 7 steps to successful writing. Plan your time. Give your main character flaws. Know your genre so that your audience will appreciate you. Know where your story is going. Don't get stuck on plot points that you can't resolve. Move on so that you can come back to them later. Don't be afraid to suck and edit later. That's all you need for successful completion of NaNoWriMo, or in fact just a successful completion of any book you step down to write. Thank you for watching. If you like this, remember to click the like button, share it with your friends so that they get some advice on novel writing too, and subscribe for future videos. Until next time, I've been Zoe Kirk-Robinson, you've been watching the Nob Mouse channel, and I'll see you tomorrow.